Follow up to my last video, my timeline theory, about repeating in a loop to clear out karma. First of all, go back and watch that video. It's long, it's complex, and it's for a reason. It gives you lots of insights and information, okay? But I'm still creating this because there were some very common questions and concerns that I want to address. Those questions being, number one, is he doing this? Is he causing this? Are we stuck? And number two, why? Why we're doing this? Okay, answer to number one very simply, no, he's not doing it. We're not giving him that much power. He doesn't have that much power. But what he is a central figure in our shared story. And very specifically, as I have said repeatedly this year in much of my content, he is an archetype of our shadows as a country. I've called him the embodiment of the 7 deadly sins, not because this is a biblical situation, but because you can see that in him. He's greed, he's corruption, he's lust, he's all these things. And because he is in a position of prominence, he is revealing where else in our society those things have taken root and have controlled many aspects of our lives. And so, as I've also said throughout this process, that him as a public figure, it's a very useful tool in helping us understand our own archetypal woundings. We use him as the villain in the story so that we can make sense of other stories in our past where we've been victimized by similar villains. So no, he's not like doing this to us, and we're not stuck and we're not suffering. It's about uniting together to learn through all these archetypal experiences we're having because he's at the helm, being so visible, doing what he's doing. These public figures shape every level of society because of their visibility, because of their influence, and because of how they move through the world, affecting all of us, whether directly with policies as a president or because we can see them for what they are, and that pushes us into our own healing, our own shadow work, our own working through layers of victimhood to overcome a certain thing. So no, he's not in charge. He's not the boss. He's not controlling any of this. He's just a very useful tool in this process. Okay, that brings us to number two. Why? Why is this happening? Why? It may seem when we first encounter this idea that it feels fraught and hopeless, and I get it. I get it, which is why I told you at the beginning of the video, you're not going to like it. But when we settle into this understanding, it actually brings more peace than confusion, I think. Now, my friend Kaylee Explains It All, did a great video on this today where she had watched my video and she got all this beautiful understanding about it. So I'm going to tag her in this. She really touches on why this is happening. And I love some of the phrasing she used. She essentially says we're needing to go through these different archetypal experiences to pop the bubble, to learn the lesson, and thus clear out that karma. And she kind of breaks it down that if we imagine there are certain archetypal lessons that we have to learn as a group, we're doing group work here, as a society, then you can see why these different timelines are separate and necessary to go through individually. Now, she uses movies as a framework for helping us understand, which is awesome. Which, side note, by the way, I know a lot of you mentioned Avengers and Loki, and I haven't seen those, so I don't know. Maybe they fit, I don't know. But again, we're talking about archetypes. So movies and books and stories, these are very helpful in giving us a contextual framework for understanding this. But I'm going to give you a very specific example that will help you understand. Let's say in one iteration of this timeline, we're exploring an archetypal lesson of victimhood, personal victimhood. For example, SA, a type of abuse. There are many, many different layers to that experience, both as victim and perpetrator, and as victims who are working through their various levels of victimhood and through to healing. So in one version of this reality, in one timeline, we have this aggressor who has risen to the top of the ranks in society. And one version of this timeline, nobody cares. They know what he is, they know what he's done, and they don't care. Or worse, they applaud him for it. And might I say, we kind of saw that vision of reality in 2016 when he was elected the first time, when he proudly grabbed him by the you-know-what, and people still elected him anyway. That experience set into motion the Me Too movement. And it took a few years for that movement to really gain traction, and it's taken even more years to get really widespread change and empowerment around this issue. And so him being a central figure, although terrible, you can see how galvanizing it is. And it gives us opportunities to see him and be part of this collective discussion and say, wait a minute. And so whether we have been victims of abuse or whether we have been unconsciously allowing a culture that talks about things in such a way and normalizes it or turns the other cheek, we've all been given an opportunity to have certain awakenings through that. So now here we are, it's 2025. We're going through this again, and what are we seeing? We're seeing a call for the release of the files, and we are seeing the group of victims of this very specific type of abuse at his hands and at the hands of his associates. They are rising to the forefront to be heard. And yes, that battle is still ongoing, but it isn't over yet. They're still fighting, and they are going to keep coming, and we as witnesses and participants demanding the release of that information, demanding justice, is us on the higher timeline, working through that same archetypal issue in a way that allows us to work through it, complete it, clear it, and close it out. So you can see in this way, we're not stuck and we're not beholden to his whims and, oh no, why won't he stay dead? We're going through these experiences that we need to have. We are seeing him and his actions and what he represents, and we're taking this environment of public discourse on it, and we're using it to work through our personal and collective healing. And when we have reached a certain level of that healing, we can consider this timeline closed out. And how we will know that happens is we see a shift, we see a change. We're already seeing many shifts and many changes, but it will be big and dramatic to know things are different from here on out. We have made that much of a change collectively that things will be different from here on out. And this is why Spirit has said throughout all of this, the revelation is necessary. The crumbling is necessary. All this corruption coming to the surface is necessary. Because just like with that type of abuse, where we need to have cultural conversations about it, everything else he's doing, we have to have cultural conversations about that. Nepotism, and about oligarchs, and about financial corruption, and about the affordability of living in America. Like all these things are necessary for us to get into and figure out and come to a higher understanding and agree on. So you can see how looking at it from this framework, it's productive and it's helpful and it's necessary. But not only necessary for creating the new, closing out the old timelines ensures that we do not go back into the old patterns. When we, as humans, as multidimensional souls, having infinite human experiences, when we have come to a place of learning and completion, we don't need to revisit old lessons. We can close that out, and there's no more energy going to those potentials and possibilities. We are redistributing our energy forward toward progress, not in the old ways.